Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is David Bianco. I don't know about you, but have you ever wondered how much it costs to make vinyl records? It's curiosity for sure. Not that I'm going to be doing that myself, but I started to look at what the costs are involved with doing that. And I wanted to share some of my findings with you here on the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. So my recent videos on pressing plants made me think about what it takes to do a pressing and what it costs to do a pressing. And that led me to find something that I'm going to share with you shortly. But of course, we all know that long before it ever gets onto a media, there has to be the actual work of making the music. And there's all of the instruments and the equipment, the recording equipment that's needed, the studio time that's needed to record that, and the mixing time and the engineering till you finally get to those songs being mixed the way you want them, and then taken off to be able to, in this case, get them to vinyl. And that's where I'm going to start, is on the vinyl mastering process. Now, luckily, I was able to see that Kevin Gray's Coherent Studios has on their website the actual rates they charge for the services they provide. And here they are. And again, this is current as of May the 19th, 2024, taking these off their website. So the mastering process takes time, and in Kevin's time to do that, it's studio time, and that's $350 an hour for however long it takes to get it accomplished. And he bills those in quarter-hour increments. Beyond that, of course, you have the physical material, the lacquer masters that need to be purchased to be etched onto. And those are, as you can see, different prices based on whether it's a standard LP or one that's going to be over 24 minutes. There's a 10-inch, 7-inch single, 7-inch EP, and those costs are there per side because each side needs its own lacquer master. He also can get you reference discs made as well as part of the process. But the real thing here to get it to a record plant, of course, is the lacquer master. So it's the physical, let's say a standard LP is a 1 LP, 2 sides, that's $750. And then however long it takes to do the mastering effort. Well, the mastering is going to take at least as long as the record is the material for that, plus more, of course, to check and redo and get everything set right and do that. So there's probably at least, 4 to 8 hours minimum involved in getting the studio time. So when you look at this, you're looking at, $2,800 in a day, and then the physical side. So, on a standard LP, you may be looking at mastering costs of around $5,000 potentially in that neighborhood, maybe a little bit less. But that's what is done there in order to get that lacquer done, in order to ship that off to a pressing plant to make the record. So on the record production side, I found that the Vinyl Media Pressing website, now that's the pressing side of VMP, Vinyl Me Please, the vinylmediapressing.com site had an option for Start a Project. So I thought, let me see what that is. And they have a very nice laid out intelligent form that gives you dynamic pricing for making a record, and it gives you the various ways to configure what you want and get a price, best estimate at least, based on what you need. So at the beginning here you see plating and setup for number 1, and so how many discrete discs do you need? So if you want one record, two-sided record, it's a 12-inch record here. It shows that that's the cost. And you can see to the right, there's going to be some associated costs that are going to relate to it. So if and when I change any of these options, you will see that they increase the cost on the right side. So this is a configurator, basically, as they're called, which configures your order. So we'll start with a one record solution, And you can either provide audio files or a lacquer. And if you provide a lacquer, well, then you don't really need the audio source piece of the equation. So that goes away. So if you have a lacquer, as we were talking about in mastering, then you're ahead in terms of the cost. Let's go down to the physical vinyl now. So in this area, what we end up with, let me adjust this a bit. So you're going to say how many test pressings you want. The standard is 10. They're complimentary. And so it says they're complimentary, but I see a $150 charge on the right. Not sure what that's about, but the maximum is 50. Now, if you increase the amount of test pressings you want, it looks like they're $10 a pop. Okay? So let's just go back to 10 where most people would need it. Then it gets into the record weight. Do you want standard or heavy? Now, I'm assuming standard is 140 and 180 gram would be the heavy. That's just an assumption on my part, but it affects the cost on the right side, as you will see there under vinyl. It affects it, but we'll stick with standard for now. Then we're going to talk about production records. How many do you want to reproduce as a whole once you've selected what the test pressing result is and you're good with it? So a standard weight record, the minimum is 500 obviously here, because that's pegged to the left side there. So you'll see on the right here, if you provide the lacquer, your cost is $4,280 for 500 with 10 test pressings, and that comes out to a per unit cost of $8.56 per record. Now, if you want to pick more records for production, obviously, if I slide it on the right, the cost will go up, but the per unit price goes down. So this is standard in volume pricing, typically gets you cheaper per unit costs. So you can produce here, at least with this configurator, up to 25,000 records. And you go down to a unit price of $5.31 per record. Of course, the total cost of your order has risen to $132,775, right? So there's a cost there. So let's go back to the baseline, go back to the minimum, the 500, $4,280. And again, we have a center label is color in this case, not black and white. So you can choose, doesn't affect the cost. Now we're going to get down to the record color options. 140 grams standard black is what we have as a default. There are other standard colors I imagine you can get, and they, if you select them, raise the price there. Went from $4,280 to $5,030. If you get a mix or swirl of colors, it raises it to $51, $55, and then a high melt color, which is a real combination, moves it to $57.05. So you can see in here, you can configure it from the simplest to the most complicated. Then there's other components in here. A rice paper sleeve is standard, a standard single pocket jacket. If you go with a gatefold, of course, that's going to increase the price. $44.05 for a gatefold versus $42.08, and so on and so forth. What kind of insert you want, insert finish. So all these things are going to affect the outer wrap, whether you get reusable, resealable poly bag versus shrink wrap versus open top poly bag, which is the default. So if you get resealable, you're $44.05. It goes up again, as I said. If you want shrink wrap, it's $43.30, a little less. So the most expensive option is the resealable poly bag here. So anyway, this is a fun little tool that you can use. It's on VMP's site. if you want to start a project. I really found it very fascinating and very helpful to be able to see the variety of options that you have. Now, going back to this lacquer issue versus audiophile, again, the price is reduced if you provide that lacquer. But if you produce an audiophile and provide that to them, the cost does go up from that 4,200 figure to just over 5,000 and just over $10 per unit. So having a lacquer cuts costs in some ways, and of course that lacquer is very helpful to make sure that you have a very solid mastering process, which I think is extremely important to get the highest quality sound that you can get. So there you have it, a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at costs. Of course, you can go on the vitalmediapressing.com site, pick Start a Project, and do your own little configuration and what things cost and what the blend of things would be if you were to make a record. I think it's very interesting. I also think the amount of flexibility you have to make selections is also very interesting as well. And we wish them a lot of success, of course, in their endeavors to press records in the industry. Now, that's their pricing. That doesn't mean that's the pricing across the board. I'm sure pricing varies from pressing plant to pressing plant for a variety of reasons. This just gives you a little bit of a ballpark understanding of what the cost is in making a record. And I think it's very transparent of them to provide that, to give us that insight. So as always, thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider pressing on the bell and picking the all option, and a thumbs up or like is appreciated, as are any comments. So until we meet you again, thanks for taking the time on the Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. Take care, everybody.